folks. You're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm not going to waste your time. Today, I have Jason with me. Hey, Jason.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Thanks for joining me today. We're going to give you a little Q&A and just kind of figure out what your childhood was like, what kind of education and training you did, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into your job and just see what it's all about. So folks that are listening may have some inside information from someone who's been successful at it. So Let's just go ahead and start with your upbringing. Rough, quick little, where were you born? How many siblings? That kind of a deal.
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, lived there for about 16 years, have one sister. When I was 12, my dad became a minister, so we moved to a little town of about 2,000 people where he started ministering. So I grew up in a parsonage, basically, and and
a parsonage, is that a basically a home that the church provides for the minister and his family?
That's right.
Okay.
And in my case, it was right next to the church, so I got to mow the church's lawn every time I mowed my own lawn. It was great.
Did they pay you for it, or was that just expected as
No.
the preacher's kid?
The preacher's kid just got to mow the lawn for free. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it probably built character, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah, for sure. And also I learned how to mow. So my first job was mowing lawns around the neighborhood.
Okay.
So it paid off. My dad let me use the equipment, so trusted me with it. So yeah, that was my first attempt at making money, was mowing the lawns of the people around there.
Back then, they probably didn't have the fancy riding lawnmowers that they have now with the suspension seats and whatnot. Everything was a push mower, wasn't it?
It was a push mower, and it was not one that had any power to it. It was I was the power for the push mower. So yeah,
So you really built some character.
Get pretty hot in the Oklahoma summer for sure.
Oh, I bet. Well, when you weren't being forced to mow by the church, what kind of hobbies did you have, or what fun things did you like to do?
My friends and I liked to get out into the country. So I lived in town, of course, next to the church, but I could ride my bike about a quarter of a mile and get to a creek called Salt Creek. And my buddies and I would go out there and do all sorts of things. Bow fish for carp, catfish. We would. I bought an inflatable raft with some of my mowing money, and we floated down the creek one time. Just all kinds of random stuff like that. Mostly outdoor stuff. We like to camp and spend time outside. And then once I got a little older and got a motorcycle, started going out around there where there were ponds and things like that I could explore, and would go fishing with my friends. So I got the motorcycle because I got a paper route when I was 14. That was my first real job, I guess you'd say.
You did a paper route on a motorcycle?
Yes, I did.
That was you probably set some records for the fastest delivery for the region, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The guy who taught me did it in a car, and he had nothing on me. Once I figured out my route, I was riding down the road with no hands, flinging papers with both hands. I got through that route pretty quick. It took me about an hour and a half to deliver 325 papers every afternoon.
Good grief.
Yeah. I had that down to a science.
Right on.
But that's what enabled me to buy my motorcycle, which let me have a little freedom and be able to explore the countryside around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was great.
Good deal. So I'm assuming that you went through high school and then you went to college. What was your degree in, or what did you specialize in when you went to college?
I was a business major in college.
Okay.
Business administration. So that's what I focused on. Went out to California to go to college, and really liked it. I was in San Diego.
Nice.
Yeah, really nice area. And problem is once you go to San Diego, California, you don't really want to leave.
Yeah.
So I hung around there and ended up right towards the end of college finding a job there in supply chain, working at a freight forwarder. So the job there was basically I was a dock worker. Started out as a dock worker, so I would load and unload trucks
Okay.
every evening.
With a
And then I
forklift
kind
or
of
a pallet jack or by hand?
yeah, both, all
Oh, okay.
three
Okay.
actually. Yeah, yeah. I got really good at driving a forklift actually.
Right on.
We would load 53-foot trailers all night long basically and send them across country. So got really good at that. Kind of moved up from there and in the same company and started. Well, actually, I created a position for myself where I would work overnight tracking and tracing freight. So it became a full time salaried job at that point.
Nice.
And yeah, I was working overnights, which I wouldn't recommend.
That's rough. The overnight stuff. I've done that and I never did really get used to it. You just kind of suffer through it.
Pretty much, yeah, it's tough. It's your sleep schedule. You don't know what you're missing until you start messing with your sleep schedule. It really
Right.
messes with your head. So I did
What
that for a while.
did they specialize in shipping one particular thing or was it anything and everything that came through there?
Well, we had sales guys, and they would go out and find clients, the local companies around San Diego who needed to ship things either close or all the way across the country.
Okay.
So it was pretty much we shipped all sorts of things. It's mostly around there. It was mostly tech. So, for
Okay.
instance, one of our biggest customers was Qualcomm. We would
Oh yeah.
send phones all over the
Mhm.
United States, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were there for a few years or were
I
you
was there
there
for
for quite a
five
long time?
years.
5
Yeah, I
years
stayed
on the
there for
graveyard
five.
shift,
Yeah.
huh?
Well, about the last two were graveyard. The first three was I started out part time on the dock, then I went full time on the dock, then I became the dock supervisor, and then I moved to tracking and tracing indoors. So
Nice.
about 5 years of moving up the ladder, I guess you could say.
I don't anybody
But
that's listening, we've got a storm in the area, and so you may hear rain and thunder and lightning. So apologize for that. But the time was ready to do the interview, so that's what we're dealing with. But Jason, do you find that your time on the dock when you started from the very bottom and then worked your way up, just slowly progressing and learning each position, when you finally got up into management, I'm sure that that helped you do a better job overall because you knew you were essentially an expert on every position that you were now managing.
yes, yes, I'm a big proponent of that, and
Yeah.
I actually use that concept in my current position.
Okay.
That's something I firmly believe in. I think it really helps to get a basically whatever company you're working for, whatever industry you're in, having that foundational knowledge that you get from kind of starting at entry level and working your way up makes a huge difference in your ability to be successful as you move up, I think.
What's also nice is that when you get in a position to affect change, there is always something about your current job, no matter what it is, that you don't like and you want to change. And it's nice to be able, when you get in the spot, you can go, you know what? The one aspect of that job was always just a pain in my rear. So I'm going to change that and make it better. And here's how. And see, it's nice to have the ability to make decisions and act on it.
Well, personally, I'd rather leave it alone so that they have to go through what I went through.
Right on. Yeah, the suffering.
Yeah,
You're all about building character. I see that lawn mowing really
exactly.
affected you, didn't it?
Yeah.
So you worked there at the freight forwarding company for a few years, and then what was your next step after that? Where did you leapfrog to?
Well, I had some good college friends who lived in LA, had lived in LA, grew up in LA basically, and then they went back to LA after college. And one of them worked at a small company that was in aerospace, and we wrote tech manuals for the airlines. basically tech manuals specifically for the in-flight entertainment systems of airlines. It's a
Huh.
very specific
Yeah,
deal
that's
there.
quite the niche.
Yeah. So he got me an interview to come in and do that. So I interviewed for that and got in and started again, ground floor. Um, but I mean, it was ground floor, but it was white collar ground floor. So
Okay.
it was actually a pay increase from what I'd been doing.
There you go.
And yeah, I was. That's mainly why I left freight forwarding. I actually enjoyed it, but it didn't pay, and I saw no chance for basically when you're in a position where the next step up is not attractive to you,
Yeah.
even though and it doesn't pay much more anyway. At that point, that's when you start looking around.
Right.
What else can I do? So that's what motivated me to switch careers and move into uh, the tech manual business.
What
So then I moved
so
up to LA at that point and started working there.
okay. So you didn't have really any experience in the tech manual field. What did you just basically have to, were you self-taught? Did you sit down and learn the software on your time off, or did they have a somebody that showed you how to do it, or how did you kind of get your legs in that new career?
So the position wasn't actually as writer; it was more as dock control.
Okay.
And I had a lot of experience with dock control. I actually helped someone write the ISO 9000 documents for the freight forwarding company I worked for. They
Okay.
got their certification, and I sat with the main person that was heading that up, and we wrote tons of work constructions and QOPs. And so I learned a lot about documentation and how to properly store it and things like that. So I used that on my resume basically when I was talking to the next company and about doing dock control for them. So
Now,
yeah,
I'm
that's kind of how I
going
got in
way
there.
back to my careers and my jobs before the fire service, which is what my career has been for 23 years. ISO 9000, that's a manufacturing standard. It's a certification. That way, the company you're dealing with, they have the same processes, so to speak, that you do. And so there's some familiarity there. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
At its core, it was standardization of processes.
Okay.
The freight forwarding company I worked for had what are known as stations, and the stations were all over the United States, and we wanted each station to be doing similar tasks exactly the same.
Okay.
So somebody had to write out those tasks and then pass it on to all the other stations and say, okay, here's how you do this. Please follow this, because you'd get audited every year. Someone would come in and check to make sure that everyone was actually following the procedures.
Well, continuity is probably pretty important in that field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just efficient. It's so inefficient to have the same function being done differently,
Sure.
either within your company by multiple people, and or if you have, it'd be like if McDonald's, uh, if the cheeseburgers tasted completely different at every McDonald's you went to because everyone was just making it up as they went along. It
Yeah.
just wouldn't make sense.
So you got your foot in the door. You were doing document control. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then where did you set your sights on where you wanted to go next? Where was your next, because you're constantly trying to go to the next level to improve yourself, to get a better position, better pay, etc. So what was the path to where you wanted to be that you saw?
Well, what I noticed pretty early on is that I was pretty good at picking up concepts, and I have a very organized mind in terms of how to create processes and repeat them. And I realized that moving up meant I was going to have to start managing departments and managing teams. So, though I don't necessarily love that, it's pretty much, I recognized early on that I was going to have to learn how to manage people and you know, get into that side of
Sure.
things. Yeah.
That's a big shift from only managing yourself. And if you get something right, you get all the credit. And if you get something wrong, you get all the blame. But sometimes when you have people underneath you that make mistakes, it wasn't your fault, but you still have to take the blame and the responsibility for it and then figure out a way to fix it. And that's a different ball of wax when you shift gears in a career like that.
Yeah. And I think it does take a certain kind of mindset to be good at it and
Yeah.
to kind of get comfortable with that because it really is, that's a constant where you have to be willing to take ownership of the good and the bad and deal with whatever comes your way. So, you can look at it like, well, if they didn't do this thing, then either I didn't train them well or I'm not producing the amount of oversight I should be to make sure that they're doing it. So either way, it's my fault. So yeah, you pretty much you have to get
Yeah.
comfortable with that pretty early on in the process.
You've probably developed a pretty robust level of patience in dealing with people in that kind of a scenario.
Yes, yes, and I have made mistakes in the
That was
past.
a very diplomatic answer. Yes. Yeah.
I
So,
have definitely made mistakes in the past, but yeah, I've learned to be more patient.
well, mistakes sometimes, unfortunately, are the best way to learn and the best education you can get. But it really stinks when you're right in the middle of it.
Right.
So, you saw yourself wanting to manage people. You wanted to move up, and that was the next step. And so, let's jump forward. How long were you with this company that we're talking about now?
I was there 19 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So just to give a quick synopsis of that, I moved up to dock control supervisor, if you will, to general manager, and then director of production. Basically, was the role that I had when I left. And at director of production, at that level, I was managing the entire production team, which includes writers, illustrators, engineers, dock control, the entire dock control team. So I was managing all of that, and I was also the customer liaison and doing all the scheduling of our production of books.
Good
So
grief.
yeah, that was a pretty
That's a full
meaty
plate.
role. Yes, I
Yeah,
stayed quite busy.
I bet. How many people were you managing in that role as director?
Probably about, it would vary, but it's somewhere in between 15 and 20 or so at any given
Okay.
time. It was a
What?
small company. We only ever got up to about 35 at our largest.
Okay. Well, good deal. Are there, to kind of go down a few little rabbit holes real quick, the types of jobs that you managed? You had the dock controller. You said there was a technical writing job. What types of specializations do you have in a company like that you were working for, and you were making airline manuals? Is that correct?
Right, right. We're making maintenance manuals for the maintenance crew
Okay.
for the airlines. So, we had basically FAA specs that we had to follow.
Okay.
And there's another thing called an ATA spec that we had to follow. So part of it was making sure that everything we did, all the documentation we produced, met the specs that are expected by the airlines, and above them by the folks that judge their work, basically.
Okay.
So yeah,
What
and we
types of
basically
people?
built that into our software. One of the things we did at that company was create our own software for writing books.
Okay.
So we tried to build as much of the spec and everything into the software so that the actual writers and illustrators and everybody, they basically had to conform to the spec to do their jobs. So that was one of the little key things that I picked up working there is, you can tell people how to do a thing a certain way, But if you can create systems that guide them toward that, it's a much more efficient way to handle it.
So, if someone was working on an airline, some sort of a mechanic on whatever part he was working on, in the olden days, I guess he would have a book of schematics where he would just look and go, "All right, this wire goes here and there," and you're just working on all of those directions and the diagrams and everything in digital form.
That's right. Yeah, we
Okay.
delivered PDFs basically. And towards the end of my stay there, they had moved from physically printing books to using iPads, basically.
Okay. Well, yeah, you can cram an awful lot of manuals into an iPad, so that seems like that would be
Yes.
way more efficient.
Yeah, and these are just the IFE portion, in-flight entertainment portion. I mean, the books we were writing were anywhere from 200 to 1,200 pages,
Good
front and
grief.
back. Yeah, these are large, large books. So if you can imagine maintenance folks trying to carry that around and refer to it on the plane, yeah,
They'd have to have
doesn't
a guy
happen.
just designed to carry their books around.
Yes, a book Sherpa.
So you were there for 19 years. That's a pretty good stint. And
Yes,
you were out in the Los Angeles area. What,
that's right.
you're not there anymore, obviously. So what was your next step? What had you looking elsewhere or just ready to make a
Well,
move?
yeah, it was a good paying job, and I'd saved some money and I bought a house, and things were going well financially. And I'd always wanted to get back to the Midwest because I just really enjoyed my youth in the Midwest. So I started looking around in the Missouri area for some property to buy. And back in 2018, I ended up buying some acreage in Missouri, and it had a house on it and a barn. And I moved my parents into it. And the plan was I'll keep working in LA until um, it seems like the right time to move. And then I'll come out and build a house and go from there. But then COVID came along.
Oh boy.
So 2 years into my 5 year plan, I guess you could say, COVID came along. We all ended up stuck in our houses, especially in California. And then our largest customer decided to end the contract and took their work uh, offshore. So that dried up, and that was basically 95% of the work that we were doing. So there
Oh
was a
geez.
mass layoff at that point, and I was one of the ones that got laid off. Yeah, so it was perfect for me because I'd I was already, now that I had the property and I was coming out and visiting it, I was getting really itchy to get out here.
Sure.
So I just took it as a sign and just packed up and moved to Missouri at that point. So that's
That
how I got
probably
out here. Yeah.
it probably feels a little more like Oklahoma and Missouri than it did out in California, especially in LA, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cost of living is probably a lot less. COVID, man, that just good grief, that was a monkey wrench into everybody's lives. But let's not go down
Yes.
that road.
Big time.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So now you're in Missouri. You've got your property. Things are going good. Now I'm guessing you got to find another job. So, what'd you do then?
Well, at that point, after 19 years of what I was doing, as you mentioned, it was a pretty labor intensive work I was doing there towards the end, and I was really ready to try and do something else.
Okay.
And um, I decided I would just take a good long time and try to find a job in an area that was very interesting to me. And the number one thing was to try to find the type of company that I would want to work for in my next chapter. So spent a while looking around, found the company in Rogers, Arkansas, which is about 45 minutes from here,
Okay.
and applied for it. And I applied for a customer support role, and based on my experience, I was overqualified for the customer support role, but I could only hint during the interview at certain things that I had done that kind of fit into the customer support window, because I was a liaison in my last job, and I kind of played that up, and I played up the fact that we built our own software, and that part of my job was training our customer on how to use the software, and that I was receiving calls on a daily basis from customers needing support. So I was using all those things, although this company that I'm trying to work for was actually a software as a service company that had developed software in the supply chain world. So it was not a straight across fit, especially because supply chain is it's it's a whole different kettle of fish from aerospace, and I knew I was going to be in for a lot of playing catch up. But the company was just exactly what I was looking for, and location was great, and they let you work remotely. So I thought, that's great. I can work from home a few days a week and go in a few days a week, which to me sounded like the ideal setup. So yeah, I applied for it, and I just told them straight up that I recognize that my resume shows me as overqualified for this, but I really do like to get in on the ground floor with companies and kind of work at that level, and then kind of look around and go, where would I like to go from here? So that's how I approached it. And they
All
liked
right.
it, and they went ahead and hired me.
Well, there you go. And you've been with them for how long?
I've been there coming up on 2 years now.
Okay. And are you still in the same role that I mean, you're obviously a guy that gets your foot in the door and you show them you do a good job and then you just start climbing the ladder. Um, have you been able to do that in your current company?
Yes. Yeah. I started out as customer support, and within about 9 months, um, after many discussions with my VP, they offered me the role of manager of customer support.
Okay.
So I took that, and that's what I'm doing now.
Well, you're going to be CEO at this pace in about another year and a half, I would imagine.
Well, it's funny is at this point, I'm looking. We talked earlier about, like, well, you're in a company and you look around, you go, what else would I like to do in this company? And at this point, especially in my career, I kind of like where I'm at. Um, I'd like to grow within this role and maybe take on some more. Like, the way the company is set up, we have customer support under the customer success but envelope, basically, and then there's also customer ops and a few other role subsets inside underneath that umbrella. So the natural move would be to co-opt some more of those subset type positions and pull them under my authority, if you will.
Okay.
So I could see that happening in the future, but at this point, I've grown the department. There were two people doing this when I started, and now we've got six. So we're growing, and the company's growing like leaps and bounds. So I could basically stay where I'm at, and I would be managing who knows how many people in the next 5 years. I'd probably be at the 20 or so level. I'm thinking it's probably what
Yeah.
it's going to be, something like that.
Well,
So we'll see how
as you
that
get a
goes.
little bit older, you start to realize that money, while it's certainly important and you want to make good money, if you're making a bunch of money but you're miserable, what's the point? So if you're happy where you're at, that really, I don't know, it's kind of hard to put a price tag on, enjoying going to work or not hating it and being good at what you do. And so I think sometimes people promote just because they feel they have to, but they were genuinely happy where they were just five or $10,000 ago. Was that small raise worth, you know, what you have now?
Yeah.
So
And honestly, if I was 20 years younger, that would be me.
Yeah.
I would be I would be looking at it like a ladder and trying to work my way up as far as I could go. But because I've already been there and I'm paying attention in this company and I'm seeing the thing that I'm a nuts and bolts type person. I've always enjoyed process and getting my hands dirty and never getting too far away from the actual labor in a company. And what I've found, even in this company, is if I go even one step higher, like director level, most of my days are going to be spent in meetings with other folks at the director and above level
Yeah.
versus actually doing the work
Right.
and working with the people who are doing the work. So at this point in my career, I just really don't want to go there. I would
Right.
rather stay where I'm at and grow laterally, I guess, just expand in this role versus move up to the next level where I find myself chained to my schedule every day.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to say the name of your company. I wasn't going to ask, but what type of company? What exactly do you do? Um, can you sum that up? Or you said you're
Yeah,
dealing with customer support, but in what way?
yeah. So it's in the supply chain world,
Okay.
and basically, we sit between suppliers and retailers.
Okay.
Suppliers will send their product to retailers and then invoice them for their product, and retailers will give them something known as a deduction from their invoice for various reasons. For instance, they would say, "Hey, here's a deduction because there was a shortage. Like you said you were going to give us 10 units and you only gave us 8."
Okay.
Or here's a deduction because this pallet was crushed. The product on this pallet was crushed. Things like that. And these deductions, it sounds fairly cut and dried, like, okay, well, they received it and something was missing or something was crushed. But what we found is that 80% of the time, that's actually not true. So, our role, we created software that makes it easier for customers to actually dispute those. So, for instance, they say, "You say we received only 8 out of 10, but I've got a bill of lading here that's got a stamp on it that shows you actually your dock worker said we got 10 out of 10. So please pay us for the 2 that you deducted."
Hmm.
So that's kind of how that works. And there's a lot of money in that. We get our customers back millions of dollars just by helping them uh, actually dispute the deductions. And what
So
we actually do is we create software. We have a software that makes it much easier and much faster and gives them much better visibility into the deductions they're receiving, and
okay.
then it educates them about what it is you need to do to win back these deductions.
Now, you said that you're getting your customers back millions, so you're not dealing with you're not dealing with just small little local shops. You're probably dealing with some huge corporations.
That's correct.
Okay. And I would imagine you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of, you know, doohickeys or widgets, whatever the product may be, truckloads of stuff, multiple truckloads of stuff. So I can see how inventory, man, that's a legitimate full-time job for a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah, it's big business, and we have enterprise level customers that are spending billions, you know, being paid billions of dollars by
Right.
retailers every year.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, their deductions add up very quickly,
So,
and it's just a lot of that money can be gotten back as long as you know how to do it, and that's where we
yeah.
step in.
Well, yeah, yeah. Obviously, want to have the money go where it needs to go. If somebody wanted to get into your line of work, what if they were looking at I'm graduating from high school and I'm going to go to college? Is it a general business degree? Is it management? What type of education could get them in the door for a company like the one that you work for now?
Well, if they were going just to get in the door in general, there are a lot of supply chain degrees where you could basically, especially in the Arkansas area where
Okay.
Walmart lives,
Okay.
a lot of the colleges around there have supply chain management type degrees.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
you could just go straight for it, basically. That's probably the most direct thing you could do. Um, we also offer, like at our particular company, we offer internships, and we
Okay.
get some really great candidates in via the internships, and they can do all sorts of things in our company. And we actually hire pretty much every intern class. There's at least one or two or possibly more interns that end up being offered a full-time job afterwards. It's a great way to kind of test the waters, and they're paid internships, so they're making reasonable amount of money while they're working for us as interns, and then the payoff is they get offered a job at the end in some cases.
Now, I know you
But
don't work for the schools that offer these degrees, but are these typically 2 year or 4 year degrees, or is it just some kind of a certificate program, or do you know?
it probably a little of both.
Okay.
There are four-year degrees, but you can also go in and get certifications and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's many levels that you could where you could get get your foot in the door. And of course, if you have, like in my particular role, customer support, out of college, it's probably a little tougher, but most entry level customer support roles, they know that, well, I should put it this way, companies that will hire someone for customer support recognize that it's an entry level type role. So they're more apt to hire someone out of college who has demonstrated some sort of ability in, you know, being able to troubleshoot software or,
Okay.
those kind of things. It's a little tricky. It's kind of like, how do you need experience to get the job, but you need a job to get experience.
Right.
So yeah, it can be a little tricky, but customer support would be one of those roles where you'd be more likely to be able to get a job as a customer support rep somewhere,
Okay.
and then parlay that into a real customer support role at a company like mine.
Okay. And it sounds like it's a pretty large industry, so it's not like you would not have opportunities for advancement or for growth.
Oh no, definitely. There's plenty of opportunity for growth. I mean, a lot of that depends on the company. In our
Sure.
particular case, that's what we're looking for. I mentioned earlier, that I really value people coming in and getting that foundational experience. Like, part of what I consider to be my mission as the manager of customer support is to train up support specialists and then empower them to find something else within the company that they want to learn and do, and then help move them into that new role. Because it is an entry level role, even though it is a real career. I mean, it takes a lot to be a good customer support specialist, but it's an hourly position in a company full of salaried positions, as an example. So folks don't want to stay there forever.
Right.
And I take it as my mission to have them come in, train them up, get them up to speed, and then start looking around and trying to find something within the company that they'd like to do, and then empower them to step into new roles. And then I'll bring in someone else and start the process all over again.
Well, it sounds like you're providing your company with some quality talent and then figuring out what their skills are, what they like, where their drive is, and then putting them in the position that fits them and their skill set well. They're probably going to be happy in that position, and their end product, which is their job, is going to be pretty good.
Absolutely. That concept really works well because not only does the employee have the chance to observe the role they want for as long as they want, sit in on calls, sit in on meetings, and really determine if that's something they want to do. But on the other side, the manager of that role that they're trying to get into has the ability to observe them and decide, is this someone I actually do want to pull into my department? So it's a two-way street, and it's a win-win because none of us really love having to go out into the wild to find another employee.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sacrifice on my part to be willing to do that because I'm the one who's going to suffer while my good employees move on to better, greener pastures.
It's training
But
day all the time, isn't it?
exactly. But someone's got to do it. And if you're the manager of an entry level type department, that's going to be your role. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Well, you're surrounding yourself with quality people too. I mean, have you ever considered being a recruiter? Because it sounds like that's kind of what
Oh
you're,
no.
yeah, I wouldn't either.
no, that no. The hiring process is the worst part of my job.
Yeah.
So no, I would never. I mean, I just would never want to be a recruiter. I think those folks deserve a medal. They're, I don't know how they. I don't know how they do that.
Well, let's parlay that into a couple of questions. I was going to ask you what you dislike about your job the most, and also what you like about your job the most. We know that you have a strong distaste for hiring. I'm sure firing would fall under that same umbrella. Nobody likes to do that. But are there any other
Yeah,
things
that's
that
true.
you don't particularly enjoy about your job, or you wish that you could change, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast?
Um, honestly, in this particular company with this particular role, I'm very happy with.
Good.
I mean, because one of the things that our company does that I think is really wise is they give us a lot of autonomy within our role. So as long as you're taking that seriously and doing a good job with that,
Yeah.
you're pretty much left alone to kind of build your own little empire.
Okay.
So there's really no reason you should have multiple aspects of your job that you don't like, unless you're just not fit for the role you're in. You know,
Right.
maybe you signed up for instance, we have a section of the company that does cold calling.
Okay.
If I had signed up for that, I would hate that. All you do all day long is gather contacts and cold call customers or potential customers and try to convince them to sign up for a demo to see our software. I would absolutely hate that job. So if I was in that role, I'd have much more to complain about. But knowing myself and knowing I'm really into the technical stuff and I really love to get into roles where there's a heavy learning aspect and many, many things that you need to kind of dig into and understand, being in customer support scratches that itch perfectly because every day I learn something I didn't know the day before. And the fun part to me is being able to not only pass it on to my team, but also support the teams around me with that information and bring us all up. So it's very rewarding, actually.
Well, good.
Like I said, the only part I really don't love is the hiring part, and that's just because you're just like last time I hired, I had 120 resumes to go through
Oh,
within like 6 hours, and
jeez.
yeah, and then I narrowed it down to like 10, and then I had to get on a call with all 10 of them and talk with them a little while, and then narrow that down even more, and then coordinate with everyone's schedules to try to bring them in and do. We have a three-part interview process that we have to go through where I bring in other people so they can help me evaluate. It's just it's important because it helps us really do a good job of screening and trying to get really quality employees. But yeah, it's no fun
Yeah,
going through
I
that
can't imagine
process.
that's fun for your side or for the person that's being interviewed. It's just nobody likes to job hunt. So,
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say I can't complain. I really enjoy what I do.
so one of the questions that is always on people's minds when you talk about a career is potential earnings. So I'm not asking you directly what you make, but what is the like the entry level salary? Let's use your current company as an example. I think you said it was hourly. What can someone expect to make hourly if once they get their foot in the door, and then where could they end up salary wise after a promotion or two?
Well, it's really regionally based. So I can only speak to Bentonville area in Arkansas, right next to Walmart.
Okay.
Um, but for a customer support rep, it comes in right around 50K a year
Okay.
hourly.
All right.
And for a manager, most of the managers in the company are making somewhere between 75 and probably 120, something like that. I mean, there's a lot more leeway in the manager role, depending on how long you've been there and experience and things like that. Um, but going back to the customer support rep, had you been there, say you're a customer support rep, you come in at 50K, you're getting a 5% or so raise every year, something like that. Um, we have our particular company has bonuses. So
Okay.
as long as you meet your metrics, which is usually customer service based, like uh, customer scores, like if they score you highly, you can make another couple of grand a year in bonuses. And then we have company level bonuses above that, so you can make money there as well. And then usually you have either a stock option program or something like that, so you can also bring in a little there. So for our particular company, your package for a 50K a year role is probably right around 60ish when it's all said and done. But and every year you can go up a couple grand from there as
Well,
just a regular customer support rep. And then
plus you're going to have benefits too, right? Health insurance or
yes,
maybe a more 401k matching or something along those lines.
that's right. Yeah,
Nice.
both of those. Yeah,
Okay.
so it has to be competitive, because of where we're located.
Hmm.
You really have to pay attention to what folks in your area are paying and make sure that you are competitive, because we really do want to be competitive. We've got some really, like University of Arkansas right there,
Hmm.
that we're trying to pull the top level of students from there, things like that.
Hmm.
So you want to be attractive,
Yeah.
and a lot of the way we do the attractive side is by the culture of the company. Lots of parties, lots of free food, um, very flexible schedule.
Everybody loves free
Um,
food.
right, we have unlimited PTO, things like that.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so things like that tend to attract folks who are really concerned about their work life balance.
Sure.
But
Well,
then on the manager level, like I said, anywhere from like 75 to probably 120 or something like that. Same deal. You're getting raises every year, and then you're also getting bonuses. And then as you take on more employees, so for instance, if I was to pull in more sub departments, if you will, each one of those would come with a nice 10 to 15% raise, something like that. So it kind of works like that.
nice.
So you're not going to get rich, but you can definitely make a good living and be comfortable,
Right.
especially in this part of the country.
Well, and that what you just said right there in that part of the country, that's pretty good. I know somebody that's living in Los Angeles or San Diego may think that that's what my barista at Starbucks makes, but of course, the cost of living out there is through the roof, so it doesn't translate. Um, but yeah, for the Arkansas area, I would think that would be very attractive to someone, especially right out of college. So,
Sure. Yeah, and especially if if they have the right mindset, I would tell anyone right out of college, like if you want to get in this industry, this is your best method for doing it. Get
mhm,
in at an entry level somewhere at one of these companies, and customer support is a great option. Also, that other role I mentioned where you're cold calling,
mhm,
that's another option. That is kind of on the sales track.
right.
Like if you're the type of person that is an extrovert and want and think you could do well in sales, that's where you kind of start.
Okay.
Um, and if you're more of a technical person and you like problem solving, that's when you try for customer support. So yeah, I would highly encourage like college graduates to think about that. Like, think of where you want to end up and then reverse engineer it back to, okay, well, what entry level role could I take today that I could build from here and get there?
That's a really important point that you just made. I think a lot of people think, well, I've got a 4-year degree and it's from a prestigious school, which University of Arkansas absolutely is. I'm just going to show up and they'll put me in management. And that's not how it works. You got to work your way up. Um, where you start may be higher, but you got to show that you've got what it takes to be in management. And I'm going to parlay that into a question that uh, I'm curious on your answer. I've seen interviews with CEOs and stuff online and watch videos and whatnot, and they talk about what's missing from some of the folks that are entering the job market now, the soft skills. What 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 types of soft skills or what things do you think folks, if they're really wanting to separate themselves from their peers and shine, what can they do? I know there's degrees and education and certifications and whatnot, but those intangible things that you don't really learn in a classroom, what would you be looking for if you were hiring someone?
Yeah, I can take immediate examples to kind of highlight that. Um, I have someone that I recently hired who, from day one, was uh, excited about the role and made it clear that he was excited about the role and jumped in with both feet and asked tons of questions, showed that he was engaged, and took what I taught him and started trying to get the big picture of what I was going for so that instead of having to ask me a question every time he saw something that was slightly different than what I had talked to him about, he would be able to go, okay, well, I know the main goal here is this. So this is just a slight variation from that. I'm going to try this. Or if he knew that, this is just beyond him, he knew to raise his hand and ask the question. But mainly, he would offer to come into the office every day, even though we have a flexible schedule. For the first 2 weeks, he came into the office every single day and made sure that he was available to anyone around him who would give him their time to teach him something. He made himself available. He understood the value of physically being there and not like sliding into the role, slowly and, kind of trying to disappear. Things like that. Asking lots of questions, showing curiosity and digging into things, like going, if someone goes, this thing is broken, I don't know why. What I want to see them do next is, well, I wonder if it's this. I wonder if it's that. Let me go check this. Let me go check that. I don't want it to be, this thing is broken. I wonder why. Well, moving on. It's not my problem, you
Right.
know, and especially in customer support role, that's our job every day, all day, is to see a problem and start to dig and try to figure out what's going on. And what I found is folks like that learn extremely quickly. Their
Yeah.
learning curve is really short because
Well, they're a
they
giant
figure these things out
sponge.
quickly.
Just they're
Yes.
just a sponge, just soaking up every bit of information that they can. That's only going to help them in the long run. Plus, this guy sounds like he's naturally curious.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. And
Yeah.
also just, personality type things like not being annoying. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunately in every occupation is there somebody that's annoying. So, yeah. If you
Well,
don't,
one thing is, just having enough, knowing yourself well enough to know when I should be quiet. Like some folks, like the thing that they do that's annoying is that they're set on 10 all the time.
yeah.
And, they're loud and boisterous and they're throwing their opinions out there. And you just have to know, especially in this day and age, for every two people that hear your opinion, one of them is going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
And they may not say it out loud, or they may. And you might find yourself in a battle and that you didn't expect. And, things like that where it really pays to, ease into that sort of thing on the social side. Like socially, don't go too crazy up front, like take your time, get to know people, get to know personalities before you show them
Yeah.
your personality,
Right.
for better or for
My
worse.
You may have heard this, but my dad always told me God gave you two ears and two eyes and one mouth. So you should listen and observe twice as much as you speak.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
great
took
advice for
me,
any new employee.
yeah. And it's not the just shut up, we don't care about what you have to say, but you're new here and your best approach is to observe and listen. We're trying to help you be successful. So forget about what you know for just a second, and we will show you how to do your job better. And then you can personalize it later when you become good at it. But it doesn't mean we don't value you or we think you're stupid. It just means that you're new. And nobody walks in new knowing how to do everything. So cut yourself some slack and, observe. But
And that reminded me of another thing that I find very important is when your manager gives you something to do not make them need to come follow up with you to
yeah,
make sure it was done, and especially to find out it wasn't done.
yeah,
That is huge. That's one of those things that really stands out when there are certain people, and this guy's one of them. I know if I give him the job, number one, he's engaged enough in the moment to ask me the right questions so that he really has a grasp of exactly what I'm trying to get done. Number one. Number two, he most likely is going to come back to me sooner than I expect and say it's done.
right.
It's just, I can almost guarantee that with him. And to me, that's huge. I mean, he's definitely going places. Like there's no question about it. It's going to be a
Sounds
matter
like
of,
it.
yeah, it's going to be a matter of him looking around, like I said, just seeing something else he's interested in, and then working his way into that new role. So that's a big one, I think.
It really is nice when you have folks that show up and you're like, man, we got a good one with this one here. He's going to go places, and it just makes it enjoyable to come to work because you feel like you're with someone who's competent or they're going to give you their best. So,
Right. Yeah.
well,
Well,
man.
it's kind of like kindred spirits.
Oh,
You're like,
sure.
hey, here's someone who's like me. I like
Right.
this. This is good.
Yeah, your best friend at work. So we've talked about your job, and of course, that's all fun and everything. But let's have, I'm going to ask you a couple of other questions that are just kind of easygoing questions. Just you don't have to really put your thinking cap on for these much. But um, tell me your favorite vacation. Where have you been that you just can't wait to go back? Or if someone says, "What was your favorite vacation?" It's always the first place that pops in your mind.
Well, I can't say that I could recreate it now, but as a kid, my family and my extended family all met up in Beaver's Bend, Oklahoma, which is a clear river, the Illinois River, I believe. Pine trees. We had two cabins, and all my cousins were there, and we were swimming and canoeing and all that kind of stuff. It was just the most fun thing ever. I love that. That's actually one of the reasons I decided to move to Missouri, is because I love clear water streams, and wanted that wanted to find that kind of topography to live near.
Well, in Oklahoma, it's just a stone's throw away. So if you ever want to go back,
Yeah. I'll definitely go back to Beaver's Bend at some point. I'd like to see it again, see what it's all about. But yeah, there's loves a lot of really nice places around here too. So wouldn't have
yeah.
to.
What's your favorite meal? If someone said you got one meal, I'll make you anything that you want. It's on me. What would you choose?
That's tough. It would probably be something Mexican.
Yeah.
Um, I'd have to say New Mexican cuisine stuffed sopapillas.
Oh, that
If
does
you
sound
haven't
good.
had them, if you know, you know, and if you haven't had them, you're missing out.
All right. What's tell tell me and my listener what's the one thing that you would like people to know about you that they may not know?
I don't want people to know anything about me.
So you're private. So that would be what?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
I
Moving
guess that's
on.
the answer. Yeah, I'm a private person.
What's one of the best compliments that you've ever received from an employer, a friend, a family member, whatever?
Well, actually, just recently, I had an employee who was just really struggling because they were offered a role outside my department, and they said that the number one thing that is keeping them from saying yes is they don't want to lose me as their manager. And I
Wow,
thought that
that
was a
does.
pretty good compliment.
Yeah, that is, man. That says you're doing a heck of a job.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. What what types well is there anybody that you find yourself, whether it's on social media or in the news or a famous person or an athlete or in any category, is there somebody that you admire and you find yourself listening to their speeches or whatever content they're producing? Is there anybody that you would put on that list?
Hmm.
You can say
I would
me.
say
I mean, that's fine if you want.
I I would say I admire Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say his speeches or anything, but just he's a go getter, and
Yeah.
everything he does ends up being a success, like Tesla and rockets. I mean, I just feel like people say he works them hard,
Yeah.
but I really like that someone who's very industrious like that and has just big ideas and makes them and
Sure.
brings them to life. I love that.
I think what you just said there, that big idea thing, you see those people show up in society every now and again. They're kind of the Thomas Edisons or the Teslas, Nikola Tesla. They're those people that just have these huge ideas that when you hear them explain it or when you hear them tell you what they're going to do, they almost come across as a little bit off. And you think that guy's not playing with a full deck. But you need those kind of people in society just kind of to push the limits and go, you know what? Why can't we go to Mars? I think I'm going to try and make that work. And then they spend, 30, 40, 50 years, their whole life, trying to figure out a way to make a rocket that can go to space and then land on a platform, that's the size of a house kind of thing. I mean, 20 years ago, people thought you were a lunatic, but now he's already done it. So, and now he's
Yep,
got all these electric cars and he's got satellites that provide internet all over the globe. And so you got to have those big idea, big thinkers that are willing to risk it all and sleep under their desk to make it work.
yep,
But they do come across as a bit crazy sometimes, but I guess you need that. So,
yeah. The idea is crazy until it's right there in front of you. It actually
right,
happens.
right. Yeah, it's crazy until it works. And then all of a sudden you're genius, right?
Right.
All right. Um, I always end my interviews with one question, and if you can't think of anything, that's fine. But what's the corniest joke you've ever heard that you're embarrassed that you laughed at?
It's something my dad said one time.
Yeah.
We were in a restaurant on vacation, and it was like a pizza place, and they had some rock music playing in the background, and he was trying to talk, and the music's like, I want to rock, yeah, I want to rock, yeah, rock, yeah, rock. And he got this annoyed look on his face, and he goes, will someone give him one so he'll shut up?
Oh my goodness, that's brilliant.
I'm
Oh,
I've
I'm
never
gonna be.
forgotten that.
Yeah, I won't either. I won't either. And with that, we will wrap up our episode of the Jobless Podcast. Thank you, Jason, for joining me today. I always wait until after the interview is over to ask for likes, subscriptions, and sharing. I want to make sure you like the content and you feel it's worth liking, subscribing to, and sharing with everybody that you know. So thanks again, folks, and we will see you on the next one.